was announced earlier this year that the National Hurricane Center would start producing an experimental version of the cone of uncertainty in mid-August. In National Weather Service vocabulary, experimental just means that a potential new product is being tested and users are encouraged to provide feedback during a comment period. This also means that the product may be a little rough around the edges, it may also not be available on a consistent basis, and it probably should not be used yet for critical support decisions. After the comment period is over, the National Weather Service will go through feedback to determine 1, if the product should go operational, number 2, if it does go operational, are there things in the product that needs to be modified, or number 3, do they need to create an updated version of the product and open up another comment period. We do not currently have a tropical cyclone threatening the United States, but the time has come for the release, so we want to take the time to point out the changes you'll notice about the new cone and some things that you should be aware of when using it, especially since this will be the biggest change made to the cone since 2017. The experimental cone shows both coastal and inland tropical storm and hurricane watches and warnings for the United States. The current operational version of the cone only shows tropical storm and hurricane watches and warnings in a line along portions of the coast that may be affected. The experimental version will add a depiction of these watches and warnings for inland areas in the U.S., in addition to those in effect along the coast. That is what you see here, shaded in yellow, blue, and red. These watches and warnings will take visual precedence over the cone in the experimental version. This is because these actually convey the risk of strong winds from a tropical system, which should be the primary information used to assess the wind risk before a storm. Since the cone itself does not convey the risk of strong winds, only looking at that component of the graphic can be misleading. International watches and warnings will continue to only be shown along the coast since there's no way for other countries to let the National Hurricane Center know the extent of watches and warnings that they issued. For the next change, the current graphic shows white transparent shading to depict the forecast track uncertainty for the first 3 days of the forecast, and then white stippling for the 4 and 5 day portion of the forecast. Since there really isn't anything special between the early and latter parts of the forecast, the experimental version will use white transparent shading with a solid white outline for the entire forecast cone. Something to look out for is it is possible at times that there will be a forecast hurricane point that lies outside or on the edge of a hurricane watch or warning, or a forecast tropical storm point that lies outside or on the edge of a tropical storm watch or warning. One of the reasons this can occur is that the National Hurricane Center may forecast for a system to be a tropical storm or hurricane while inland, but tropical storm or hurricane force winds are expected to be away from the center. It is important to note the current version of the cone will still be available and will not change during this experimental period. The experimental cone will be created for every advisory regardless of whether or not there are inland wind watches or warnings in effect. When you are looking at the legacy cone on the National Hurricane Center website, you can find the experimental cone by clicking the red link that says click here for the new experimental cone. To learn more or to provide feedback, visit the websites listed on your screen. Thanks for spending a minute with EM.